along. That's a Saunders. Mrs. Saunders, I can't remember. She was a little mouse of a woman. He was the dominating person, and as Mrs. Stone said, he just said what he thought, and he wasn't popular. And as I say, the children, they did just what they liked. There was no control over them at all. They were just running wild.
What sort of age were they then?
Well, the girl was in her teens, and the boy was a couple of years younger, and he just followed her. You know what I mean?
Mm.
She roamed the village wild, as you might say, and the boy sometimes was with her, sometimes not. Sometimes he managed to get hold of a village boy for a companion. But, Saunders had no room to criticise somebody else. People said he wants to look after his own family.
He didn't get sent away to school at all then, his children?
His children, I don't think so. I don't know whether this happened in the holidays, where they were. I wasn't living in the village at that time. I was at Salisbury, you see. Lots of things were happening that I didn't pay much attention to, actually, especially being right down that end of the village. Whether they did go away to boarding school, and this happened in the holidays, but as I say, they were the talk of the village.
Well, so you were away at school then?
I was at Salisbury. I was at the Bishop's School for 6 years. I stayed with a friend of mother's in there, who used to live, and she was always talking about Fiddleton. She used to live up next to Mrs. Blake at Fiddleton when she was a girl, this person. The whole family did. Her father worked for the farmer at Lamont's. It wasn't Lamont then, it was, I think it was Cooley or Notley. I'm not sure, I didn't pay much attention. And she was always talking about Fiddleton, yeah. And they were a big family. And I remember her saying that she and her sister had to go down to the farm for milk every day. And one day when they were going down, they saw what they thought was some nice rosy apples along by the wall. You know the drive down to the house? They were walking down there and planting close to the wall all the way down. They thought these nice rosy apples, and they said, we'll have one of those when we come back. And so they had one when they came back. And it wasn't apples at all, it was a tomato. And they had the shock of their lives. They'd never seen any tomatoes. You wouldn't do, you say, children. The tomatoes weren't known then. Not by village children at any rate.
My mother tells me of her first taste of tomato. They were called love apples.
Yeah.
She said she had the shock of her life and didn't like it one bit.
No,
she bit in and it was soft.
Yeah, I know. This person said they put her off tomatoes for the rest of her life. She never liked tomatoes afterwards. They were so disappointed because they thought it was going to be such a nice apple. You never know, do you? Oh yes, I used to hear a lot about life then. Life that was in the 1880s, you see. She had to leave home at 13, and her first job was miles away in Surrey, she said, at a huge house called Cosden Court. I hear a lot about this Cosden Court. It was set in its own grounds, and it was a mile from the house to get out of the grounds. There's even a church in the grounds. I don't know whether it still is there. I don't even know exactly where it is, but I used to hear it was hard work, but there was over 30 servants, and they used to have a lovely time in the servants' hall. They were allowed to have sing-songs and dances and all sorts in the servants' hall. She said we had some fun, even if it was working hard. So, I suppose they did, really.
What was it? Yeah, we just diverted you. You were saying about boys always had plenty of work and the girls
Well, somebody was talking to me the other day, and I said, well, Netherrain is completely different from what it was at the beginning of the century. Then it was a self-contained village. And this person said, well, what did the people find to do? What work did they do? I said, well, everybody had work. There was the cobbler and the tailor and the shoemaker, the carpenter, the builder. Builder was up where that behind, we got through by the paper shop.
Sure.
Builders was there.
And at the bottom of the
And
hill.
then Sir Michael Hicks Beach had all his own people. He had builders and carpenters and gardeners and people who worked on the land. I knew when an aunt from London used to come and stay with us usually every year for a week or two. And when we went out for a walk, she'd say, oh, isn't everything overgrown? I got fed up with hearing it. Oh, isn't everything so overgrown? And I said, well, because to me it wasn't. I was used to it. Ah, yes, she said, when I was a girl here, it was all kept neat and tidy. All the grass was cut and the hedges were all trimmed. Sir Michael Hicks Beach had that all done, you see. He, all his estate was all neat and tidy everywhere. And I know that he had his own builders because a great uncle of mine used to work, and I remember Mother saying that church view what's that?
In Netherade.
In Netherade, at the top of the church park,
Okay.
was built for the bailiff. Sir Michael Hicks Beach had a bailiff, see, and that was built especially for bailiff. And Uncle was the carpenter that did the window frames because they didn't get things ready to fit in as they do today. He was making all the woodwork in it, and well, that was. I should think that must have been in the 1880s sometime, because it wasn't so long afterwards that Sir Michael sold all his ground, and then this uncle went to Wilton and got a job on the Pembroke estate, because we used to go over there quite a lot, because the whole family, well, I cycled over there when I was young, through the Woodfords and straight up Camp Hill and into Wilton, so you don't touch Salisbury.
That's right.
And my people used to do that quite often. And so and in reverse, the cousins and so on from Wilton used to come to us that way. Cycling, that was the way they travelled. Otherwise, well, you had to rely on the old carrier's cart, which took longer than it did to cycle.
I suppose when Hicks Beach sold up, then that must have had quite an effect on the job opportunities in the village.
Oh, it must have done. See, because there was a lot of people working on that estate. It was all kept. When he had people working on the river, because he had watercress beds over there where there's now a sort of, where the river curves round and there's a stretch of water.
Towards the chalk thing, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes. That was all watercress beds, all looked after carefully, with plank pathways in between.
Still called the crest beds, aren't they?
I don't know.
Yes.
Well, they were. You could. When I was a child, we could walk along the planks right through it, and there was the watercress on the other side. You could pinch a few if you felt like it. But of course, they gradually were neglected. Nobody bothered about them after the ground was sold, you see, and so the planks fell to pieces, and the thing, just went.
And did the Hicks Beaches move away then when he sold up? Or?
Yes, they had other property. Now, where did they go? They had other property somewhere. Because I don't really know why they moved. I think probably they were more interested in the other property.
They had some in Gloucester, didn't they?
But
That's where Miss Kimball came
yeah.
William Street, wasn't
from. Was it actually William Street they
I don't know. I only know about them, and what Mother used to say, because she had quite a lot to do. Well, my great aunt was the housekeeper up there. The family used to go up to London for the season, you see, and she was left in charge of the house because people used to say, "Aren't you afraid to be in that great big house all on your own?" She said, "No, there's nothing to be afraid of."
This was up at the officers' mess, was it?
It's the officers'
Yeah.
mess, you see. And I don't know. Anyhow,
Did your mother go into service then?
I don't think she went with a family down to Dover as a child nurse for a little while, but I don't think she stayed there very long. I don't know.
What about your aunts?
The aunt that was a housekeeper at the officers' mess, she married the coachman, and then her husband was killed down Faldine.
That was the coach turned over
The
Boxing Day,
coach
wasn't
down,
it?
yeah.
And she was married to him then?
Yeah, Islet.
That's right, yeah.
Well then, uncle next door to us, you see my people were all crafts people. Uncle next door was a watchmaker and a very good watchmaker because they came from miles around with watches to make them in. And the front room, when I was a child, I used to go in there. The front room was sort of partitioned off, so they had a little workshop, sort of on his own, just taking in the fireplace and the bench all along in front of the window. There were watches and all scattered over. He had boards out with hooks in, hanging watches hanging up, clocks all round, and then his son.
He isn't the one that made the clock. Is he in the village now?
I don't know whether he did or not. He was in charge of it for years.
What was his name?
Was that
What was his name?
William Shepherd? I've got a little ticket that Bill Rowe got hold of. I'm sorry.
Sure, it's built by a shepherd.
There, that was one of the.
W. Shepherd and Son, practical watchmakers, jewellers, and etc. Netheregg Wilts, repair of every description and speciality, all work guaranteed. That would have been the job card. So your family came from this area, did they? Do you know, or did they move?
Well, they date back. See, I've got a book there. 1702 was the first entry for blacksmiths. They were originally blacksmiths. Well, because blacksmiths did more work than just shoeing horses. They went round to the farms.
All ironwork.
All kinds of ironwork, mending farm machinery and so on. And this one and his son branched out into cycle making, mending and so on. I think they were self-taught. I never heard about being apprenticed or anything.
I suppose they just developed to fill the need, whatever, you know.
Yes, I think so. But, yes.
So how big was how many were in the family?
Well, my grandmother's family, there were 9. So one of them went to New Zealand. The eldest of the family went to New Zealand. And we get quite a lot of visits from people who've come over on tours, and looked round the village to see their origins, sort of thing. But the rest of them, well, they stay round about. I don't know. I haven't got any near relations left. I've got some 3rd and 4th cousins, Wilton and scattered around. I didn't New Zealand, but nobody near. So, yeah.
Have they all died or moved away? Or?
Well, I've outlived them.
That's what I mean, yeah. You were the youngest, were you?
Well, my brother was younger than me, but because he died in the fire.
What, down the house?
I always thought, well, he was about 10 years younger than me, and I thought, shorter, or he'll be shorter out than me, he didn't.
How long ago was that fire? That was quite some time back, wasn't it?
That's 9 years ago. I've been over here 9 years last November.
It's funny, do you not want to put it longer than that?
No,
It seems much longer.
no, it's not. I know because it was 1975.
Yeah.
It'll be 10 years come the end of November. Yeah, I'm not likely to forget that. Still, I don't know what you want to talk about. You haven't got that on, have you?
Yeah, it's just going on.
It doesn't matter because we can rub it out.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
I was going to say.
No, because we slowed you down, but like you were saying, that there were all these trades that the boys went into,
Yes.
and the girls just got absorbed into service then, didn't they?
Well, the girls, those of Mother's generation, practically all had to leave the village.
Because of the economics of keeping the
Yeah,
house,
there was nowhere in the village. The only places where they could go into service was at the vicarage or at one of the farms. Well, there was a very limited amount, the number wanted there, you see. I mean, at Chelston Farm there were a couple of maids, usually a cook and a housemaid. And same with most of the farms, they had a couple. But the majority of the children had to go away.
How were they found posts then? Because some of them seemed to go a long way,
They
didn't
did. I mean,
Did they
I've talked to them. My aunt that used to come and stay with us was a nurse up in London. She had a very good job and she was quite happy. But she went away at 13 years old. And I should think there must have been advertisements or some kind of... There must have been some way of getting in touch with the people who wanted servants.
Mind you, I suppose all the gentry and the people with houses and such like knew where the sort of the hotbed of labour was, if you like. So they would perhaps come into the villages looking for suitable.
Well, they probably had friends in the village, you see. I should think that's how it was done. I shouldn't be surprised if Lady Lucy Hicks Beach didn't help getting jobs for girls, because she was running a Sunday school for the girls. Mother said.
That was Sir Michael's wife, was it?
That was Sir Michael's wife. She used to run a Sunday school for girls up in under that veranda place that was along there. And they had a picnic every summer. And as I say, used to go to Stonehenge very often. And in the winter they had a party. They were I think they were quite good to the people. But why they sold up, I don't know. I'm sure. I was told that Sir Michael offered the cottages they were living in to the people in the village for about £50. But of course in that time, £50 was a lot of money, and very few could afford to buy. I think the odd one or two did, but hardly anyone took up the offer. Just couldn't do it.
I suppose in those days you wouldn't have been able to set aside that much money.
No,
I assume savings were something else.
No, well, it's like Mrs. Stone said, you live from hand to mouth and just managed on what you got.
That surprised me when Mrs. Stone saying that her father was paid quarterly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was that the thing? Because
No. They
3
were.
months is
they-
a long time.
He was, in sort of nursing profession.
Even so, 3 months is a long time without any money.
Yeah. Oh,
But
yeah.
they were supposed to be a kind of profession, weren't they? And they
Yeah.
different rate of payment.
It's not so bad if it's in advance, but you bet your life it's not.
Oh no, it isn't.
Working
Must have
No, the farm labourers were paid weekly
Yeah.
on a Saturday.
Yeah.
There was no half days in those days, no Saturday half days or anything like that. They used to come in from the Downs on Saturday night. They were paid at tea time on Saturday. That was the end of their day. That was the end of their week. Well, scattered over the Downs, as you probably know, were what they called barns. Stinson's barn, Pierce's barn, I used to hear Mother talking about. Pairs of cottages for farm workers who worked on the outlying farms, like Beech's barn and Newfoundland farm. See? Well, when they were paid, they either borrowed, I should think they borrowed a horse and cart and brought their families into the village Saturday nights. The shop, which is half the size it is now, the Spar shop, was the only grocer shop in the village, and that was packed till 10 o'clock at night.
Oh.
See? They didn't shut till 10 o'clock time, and it was packed. And you couldn't help yourself. It wasn't a help yourself place, of course. It had a long wooden counter. Everybody had to wait to be served. See? And women used to go shopping. The men used to go into the pubs. And Mother, I didn't remember this, you see, but Mother says you could hear them singing, those that were going back up to Newfoundland Farm, going all up the bottom road singing, and men were happy, singing their heads off when after turnout time. And they used to bring the children and all then, you see, Saturday night.
Did they have licence-in-laws in those days? You know, were there times?
I should think so. I don't know.
I'm just wondering, you know, otherwise some might be tempted to stop all night.
I don't know whether there was.
I wonder who had the shop then.
I
wonder who had the shop.
People named Carter had the shop.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, had the shop for years.
They had the drapery as well.
They had the drapery at the bottom. And those were the only two places in the village where you could buy anything at that time. There was no paper shop, you see.
No.
That was a bakery. And I remember when I was a child, it was quite the thing to go up on Saturday afternoon, get some dough. Or was it Saturday morning? Well, anyhow, on a Saturday, my friend from Long Kennel and I used to go up, buy some dough. Not much, a few pence. Bring it home. Mother would flatten it out, put in the sugar and the fruit and the fat. See, make a lardy cake, put it in a tin. And back we went with it up to the bakehouse, and they baked it, and we played about outside waiting for it to be baked. And they didn't charge anything for baking. You bought the dough and they baked it. And it was a good idea, you see, because at that time there were no electric ovens or even oil stove ovens.
I suppose the bread oven was still hot.
Yeah. Well, yes, I suppose it was. And there's no cost to them to do it. Because I know when I was a child, when I was young, to get our oven hot, by the side of the fireplace, it was dickens of a job. Dampers had to be pulled out, big sticks poked under it, to get it sufficiently hot to cook the meat or a cake or something, so that it was a great help to take it up to the bakehouse.
What about butchers? Did they have butchers in the village?
There was a butcher came down from Uphaven every Saturday evening. Now, the Dog and Gun yard now is empty, more or less, isn't it? But in the old days, there were lots of buildings there, old stables, and one of the old stables had been converted into a sort of shop. We used to get what they call cheap jacks coming, and there was a counter along the door, see? And people used to come there and pack a little bit, I suppose, for the long guns of rent and set up a shop for an evening. Well, the butcher used to come every Saturday evening, and we could hear from where our cottage was when he started chopping bones or something, and we'd listen. Or my grandmother would say, there's the butcher. thanks, but get ready and go out. You go out with a plate, take a plate out and get your meat. You didn't get it wrapped up or anything like that. Put on a plate what you wanted. I don't suppose it was very expensive. I don't know. I didn't worry about anything like that. But he came down regularly every Saturday. About, well, in the winter time it was dark. I don't know, in the summer. I can only remember some things, certain things. Remember you listening. You listen for your ears are sharper than mine. You listen for the butcher. I'd get told. So,
because you were actually born in the village.
Yeah.
How long back was that?
That's 1902. And Mother told me that when she was lying in bed when I was born, there was a big fire up at Wexham Farm. The whole barn, the house wasn't touched. The whole of the barns and so on were burned down. And she could see the the glare in the sky. That must have been, say, 80 odd years ago.
And what, you had brothers and sisters, did you?
No.
You were sole child then?
That's it. No.
What was your dad's occupation?
Well, you see, I don't know what happened. I think my grandmother interfered, but my father and mother didn't get married for several years after I was born. No.
We'll edit that out for you.
Then,
We'll edit that out for you.
but they didn't. Well, you see, my father was and Matthews. They were living along where Mitchell's did. Matthews, yes. He had a traction engine. My grandfather there had a traction engine that he used to let out. What they called a traction engine. My father drove a traction engine. Yes. They used to go around to various farms threshing for the threshing season. And
that was an expensive thing to buy.
I should think so.
I don't know.
It's a big piece of machinery, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, even by today's standards, really, when you look at it.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot involved in it.
And this clock, my father had hung it up in his traction engine.
Oh.
And it's travelled around in that engine for years. And when I was in the Salisbury at school, I wanted a clock. There was no clock in my bedroom, you see. And I never knew the time. And so I kept worrying. I said, I want a clock. And my father says, well, I don't want that one now. You can have it. And so I took it in. And it is a good-tempered old thing. I knocked it off the side of the table at the side of the bed once. It rolled right under the bed, and it went on ticking away under there. It's heavy. It's brass.
Yes, would that have been made by your clock?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't know. It never occurred to me to ask who made it or anything about it.
No name whatsoever, is that?
It's an old thing.
Do you still wind it or not?
Do I look?
Do you still wind it up at all?
Oh, I haven't bothered with it. I don't think it goes very well. Cecil was interested in all that sort of thing. I can't be bothered with it. But I know it'll stand up to a lot of shaking about and bustling around.
It's travel around, it's traction engine. So he found quite a bit of work locally then on the assorted farms and things.
Oh yes. Well, I think he earned a very good living actually.
You need to make a fair bit to pay for the running of the instrument itself.
I think they did fairly well, one way and another. I never remember going short. Do you know what I mean? I never. Well, I seem to have done very well, really, as a child. The aunt that was a nurse in London was looking after a little girl who was a couple of years older than me. And the lady used to say, well, Nanny, if you'd like to get rid of some of those clothes, you perhaps know somebody. Well, just send it in to my mother's. Mm-hmm. So I had nice clothes while I was a child. And then the cousins at Wilton, they were in service at one of the big houses at Wilton. They used to get after I was in at school, the daughter of their family was at a big boarding school, and she was in uniform. And I had quite a lot of her clothes. They just say, oh well, we don't want it any longer. You can take it. Find somebody that would like it. And because there were no jumble sales such as there are today. There was one big jumble sale. Mrs. Owen was talking to me only last week at the end of 60. She said, do you remember Miss Buckland's jumble sale? I said, yes, I do. That was the great event in the village, where Miss Hayward lives now.
Yes, well, Mrs. Stone talked about Miss Buckland.
Yeah.
Because she worked for a lady whose husband was a cousin of Miss Buckland.
Oh, yes. Mm. Well, Miss Buckland, even when Mrs. Owen, who was much younger than me, was a child, she used to go up to Miss Buckland's to a sewing class, and we used to make things, little dolls' clothes and all that sort of thing, for the sale. We used to make a lot of stuff for the sale. You remember the sale? I said, yes, she always had it in August when the children were on holiday. And as I say, it was the only jumble sale in the village. And it was quite an affair, an afternoon out, because she had friends who used to give her things from other places. And
did she have that in the garden?
Yes. Out in part of it in the coach house, was known as the coach house. She had a pony and trap, she said. To go in there to pull that out of the coach house, and the stalls were arranged all round at the end of the garden. And got plenty of room for it, too. And she had some quite good things there. Anything. Bric-a-brac, clothes, food, vegetables, any mortal thing that would come. And then it went to Dr. Bernardo's. It was for Dr. Bernardo's. But you see now, everybody thinks of a jumble sale as a means of raising money, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
See, there's jumble sales in the summer, jumble sales all over the place, aren't there?
Well, I suppose in a way, everything you come by is free because people give it to you, so there's no outlay there.
No.
So, and you sell it back, so there's that profit.
Yes, but you see, in my young days, the ordinary people in the village had nothing to give away.
Oh, yeah.
See, clothes were worn until they were threadbare and no use to anybody.
Used, I suppose, anything they want.
Father's trousers were cut down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Father's things were cut down for the boys and others for the girls. No, there was nothing to give to a jumble sale.
You wouldn't have had sort of specific fashion items like that. Things were probably made and designed for wear and to last rather than to look pretty or whatever.
Yes. Well, it just shows that people are much better off today than they were then.
Oh, I'm sure that's
It's
true.
all very well to talk about people being poor. They don't know what it is to be poor, most of them, do they?
Well, I suppose poverty is relative, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is relative, because people call themselves poor when they've got everything you can think of. Coloured telly, well, you name it, they've got it.
Yeah.
Washing machines.
But I suppose whatever people have got, in relation to others who've got videos, computers, and God knows what else, electronic games, they regard that they're not sort of as well off as others.
Poor.
Yeah, because they've only got the fridge and the washing machine
yeah.
and the television.
Yeah. But when you think back to, less than 100 years ago, 70 years ago, I mean, people had nothing of that kind at all.
Well, a lot of it wasn't available, was it?
No.
And you wouldn't have had the electricity to run it anyhow. A lot, certainly,
there was no electricity in the village. No. So you certainly couldn't. There were no village lights or anything, see?
Did they have anything before electric lights, in street lighting? No gas lighting or whatever?
No, never had any gas in the village. No. The church, school and all were lit with oil lamps. Fine performance that was, too, lighting the oil lamps. I remember having to be lit in the school, and it's around a dark winter's afternoon, or of an evening performance or something or other, because the school was the only place where you could have any entertainment or anything like that. And it was only half the size it is now, Netherhaven School.
What did they do for entertainment? Did they run dances or?
Yes, they used to have dances. I remember Mother saying, and they used to talk about it, there was a very tall teacher at Netherhaven. She must have been nearly 6 foot tall, Mother said. And then there was a curate who was also about the same height. And when they had a dance in the school, and they had a polka, of course that was old-fashioned dances, had a polka, in 2 strides these two were from one end of the school to the other. You see, because it wasn't all that big. I mean, you take the newer part away, and that was the size of the school up till 1926. That part was built in 1926. See? And, well, you can guess, 2 tall people doing sliding down. Yeah, Mother was only a child at the time, I think, well, at least young, and she was most interested in watching these two when they were dancing.
Was Harvest Festival a big time, a big event?
Oh, yes.
Did you have a harvest supper in the village?
No, I don't remember a harvest supper. No. That was more a later innovation. I'm trying to think. No. More people went to church. I mean, the churches were churches were full.
Yes. And I suppose the chapel would have been full as well.
Yes, there were 2 chapels, you see, the Baptist and the Methodist. Yes. And they both had their, people used to come up from quite a distance to the chapels.
Were the 2 buildings, because the Methodists presumably were and are where they've always been.
Yeah, the Baptist chapel was through those gates.
Was it?
Yes.
You know where the
Where the cemetery is?
Yes, at the side there.
Yeah, there's a little small building.
Yeah, there's actually remains of it.
It should be renovated, really.
I can remember when we used to go down with Miss Frampton. We went in that building on one occasion.
Yes, Miss Frampton used to run the Sunday school, didn't she?
Yeah, in the Methodist thing. She used to go out in the field as well, on decent days.
Yes. Well, I don't know that. There was a Sunday school when I was young in the church, in one of the side aisles in the afternoon. But why it petered out, I don't know.
Well, Mrs. Blake was saying that they were expected, weren't they, to take the Sunday school?
Yes.
The teachers at the school were expected to take the Sunday school, yes, they were. But when I was young, the vicar took the Sunday school in the church.
What about the reading room? When did that come into existence?
The reading room, that was built by Sir Michael. Well, no, it wasn't built by him, but he provided, this is only what I've heard from my people, he provided the material, and the men in the village did the work, put it up.
Yes.
So it didn't cost anything. The church people, it was for the church reading room for for the young people, particularly the boys, to go. I suppose a Bible reading in the first place, I don't know. But it became a sort of games room, more or less. When it was reading room, I don't know. It's gone through some changes.
So it's been a bank.
The bank was there, had half of it at one time. The Women's Institute had half of it.
Yes.
Yeah. I know my mum used to clean it when it was a bank. So I know we used to go and pull the drawers out. You know, they used to have these big wooden, like, bowls for putting money in.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
You know, sort of, it was part of the almost like a till, except in the bank it was all carved oak or something, but it was superb for sort of playing with those things, you know, never any money in it.
Oh, yes.
And there used to be an old piano in there, so I don't think it was even partitioned off.
No, it wasn't. Not properly, no, it wasn't. I believe the partition's always been there, but it was usually back, so that it was one place with a fireplace each end. It was made as two places because there was two fireplaces, one at each end, wasn't it? But the partition was usually back out of the way. Well, I don't know, it's disappeared altogether now, isn't it?
Well, that's right. I mean, it's just the library now, isn't it?
Mm.
It's funny, banks in the village seem to have a habit of sharing. I mean, the one we've got now is sharing with the hairdressers, isn't it, effectively?
No.
Well, all right, they've made it into two separate buildings,
Yeah,
but it is a sort of a single unit that's divided up.
yeah. Yes. Well, I don't know.
Because, I mean, that used to be the cafe, didn't it?
Yes, well, it was put up as a cafe, wasn't it? Supposed to be a cafe.
Because Harold Marchant ran it.
Yes, but I don't think it paid.
No, they used to do fish and chips down there, I seem to recall. Because Mrs. Pike worked
Yeah,
down there at the time, that is now married to Harold Marchant.
yeah. I don't know. It's,
Whether it did any decent trade when the troops were in the village or not, I don't know.
well, evidently he didn't make it pay, so, or he wouldn't have given it up, would he?
Somebody took it on after him, didn't
Yes, I believe they did, but it didn't work. They couldn't make it pay. No, it was a pity when the chemist shop went, you see. Nobody ever really made that place pay afterwards, did they?
Yes. Do you know, it's funny you say that, because I was only saying to Sue before I came out, it's difficult to imagine we used to even have the whole chemist shop. That was Bennett, wasn't it? That was the chemist in there.
Yes, it was a very useful place, the chemist shop was, because there was a qualified chemist there, you see. He could, well, he was almost as good as a doctor, because he
They often were in those days.
Pardon?
They often were.
Yes, he could tell you what was good for so and so, and if he wasn't sure, he would say so. No, he'd say, "You better see the doctor." But,
But the last one I remember, there was a chap called Bennett that lived in Court Farm Close. He had two daughters, and I think he retired and went back to Wales.
He went to Wales, yes. His health was poor. He gave up because of that. But we didn't. Who did we have? No, he was the only chemist. When he came here as a young man, he was up in a hut at Old Post Office Lane. There were 2 or 3 huts up there. You know where the new building estate is now. Well, there were 3 army huts up there. Yeah. One small one, where the chemist set up shop. He said he just started up as a young man and brought up the business. See? And the other 2 were, well, the Working Men's Club began in one of them. They started the club in one of those. And the other one Well, it had a varied existence. A man went up there with fish and chips, and then an Air Force family moved in and lived there for a while they were waiting to go abroad. It just used for all sorts of things. But the Working Men's Club were up there until they had their proper building up where it is now. Yes, I remember a photographer moving in up this odd hut. Why I looked upon it as it's many different people got into it. As I say, there was a fish and chip man, there was a family living there was a photographer there, and goodness knows who else. But the council interfered, and once the Working Men's Club had moved into a proper place, they said all had to come down. And then the chemist, as I say, moved down by the post office. That was that.
Yeah. There were some old sheds around, but they used them as garages, didn't they? When there were allotments on what is now very close side. There were 3 or 4 allotments there and greenhouses, I seem to remember.
Yeah, I remember the greenhouses.
Yeah.
And then there were also those wooden sheds there, weren't there, where that lad did the paint spray.
I don't know. Of course, one thing to come back to a cavalry school, Raymond Kite's grandfather, Raymond Kite's grandfather, had a contract to dispose. I'll tell you, he dumped it all the way out. Well, the troops used to be very heavy smokers, I should think, but players' cigarette cartons were always a lot of those up there, and the troops never bothered to pull out the cards. So the children down our end of the village, as soon as the rubbish cart went up there, with the horse and carts, they say, well, let's go and see if we can find some cards. And we used to go, and I got hold of sets of cards like that because they were clean. They were still in their cartons, so thrown down there. And
You still got them?
well, no, I didn't bother to keep them. You see, I've got a few left in one of them drawers there, but not sets. A few odd ones. I had a set of the stars, a set of the army uniforms, and all birds, all that sort of thing. And children used to swap. It was quite an interesting look. It's got a look, fresh lot coming. See. And
Who were your companions then? Are they still around?
well, my special friend was a girl along Kennel Row. You wouldn't know. I mean, her father died and she moved out. She died last year. No, she died her 80th birthday. She died a couple of years ago. I kept in touch with her. We were friends from the time we were 4 years old. And we started school together. And we used to be together. But there was a whole gang of children there. One day I was reckoning up how many children there were down when I was young down that end. And there were over 30.
Oh, no, really?
Yes.
Well, just in Kennel Row.
At Kennel Row, and we're around the other houses, you see, and the thatched houses round that little corner.
Behind the nursery. Yes.
Yeah. No, there were no houses in the nursery.
No, but behind the nursery.
Yes.
Coming up the stream there.
Yes, further up the stream. There were children in every house, practically, almost. And 3 or 4, where they put them, I don't know. Because, you see, in Bobby Fisher's house, there was only 2 bedrooms. One of those was very small, on the top of the stairs. And when we were young, there was father, mother, a girl and 3 boys. Don't know where they put them. And then in the next house, there was father and mother, 3 girls and 1 boy. So, and then Hardings, there was a bit bigger. There 2 big bedrooms. Their house did. They were 3 girls and 1 boy. So there was children all along there. Well, along Kennel Road, along the end where the maidens lived, the finish, there was a family, about 6 children, I should think. And there was only 2 bedrooms, you see. A family called Wade. They're all the way along there, the children. And as I say, we had some fun down that end playing. There was always plenty of children to play with. And always a group going up to this rubbish. When we saw the cart had to go by that road. And all the stuff that they threw out then, you'd find, for sometimes we used to pick up a fork. That would do to dig the weeds out of the garden rail for. You'd find all sorts of crockery and especially when the troops were moving out. They dump all the knives and forks and plates and everything else were out, yes. And when the whole lane got filled up with rubbish, Kite went a bit further. It was old Ted Kite, Luther Kite's father. You know Luther Kite, didn't you?
Yeah, I knew.
His father used to go on a bit further. They had a piece of ground up by the folly. Starvall, they called it. It was supposed to be a very barren piece of ground. Mother always called it up Starvall. And the rubbish went right the way around there. And when it had filled all the lane, then it remained in a heap up by the folly up there.
So they've still got a barn, haven't they, by the folly?
Well, I don't know, I haven't been up there for ages.
No, they did that.
Yeah. But that was back just before and during the First World War. After that, I don't know what happened. Somebody else got the contract for, and then the man, Ted Kite, was getting on. I think he developed a septic tone, and then they found he had diabetes. He was diabetic. It's all in that family now, isn't it? Yes, it is. Oh, yes. Ted Kite, he had quite a big family, see. One of them married Al Shepherd. Not Al. Yeah, Al Shepherd's father. Oh, crumbs. I'm mixed up. Yes,
I thought Mrs. Shepherd's mother was a kite.
No, Al Shepherd's mother was a kite. Al Shepherd's mother was a kite. Mrs. Shepherd, Eunice, was Welsh.
That's right, yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Kate Forsyth.
Kate Forsyth's mother was a kite.
Yes, that's right. They were sisters, weren't they?
Yes. That's right. And the diabetes has cropped up in quite a number of that family, descendants. Alf had it. So did Mrs. Rowe, his twin sister. So did David Shepherd. That's the same family. David Shepherd's father had it. See, it's surprising how it does seem to crop up in the families.
Was all the rubbish collected by Mr. Kite round the village then?
Oh no, he only had the camp contract. Nobody collected rubbish around the village.
So what did you do with all your rubbish?
Oh, buried it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one place that got filled up with rubbish. During the First World War, they dug trenches up above the riding school. You know where the riding school is, don't you? Well, up on the brow of the hill, just above that, they dug trenches. I think it was more of an exercise for the troops because it was a trench war in the First World War, wasn't it?
Yes.
And I think to use as, I don't know how they managed it, but they were training troops up there, and I think probably they were dug for exercises. Anyway, they had quite a labyrinth of ditches, trenches all around there. Well,
Do you mean the field behind the cricket field?
the field beyond the cricket field,
Yes.
and behind the riding school.
Yeah.
I don't know whether there's any sign of the trenches still there.
They
Is
had
it?
some trenches there,
Yeah.
behind the cricket pavilion.
Oh no, nothing. Nowhere near the cricket pavilion. Over in the field.
What, more towards Farmdean, you mean?
Yes.
Further down. Behind the big MT hangar. What's it, North Lodge, is it, behind that? No, what's that? What's something Lodge? Or is it the Lodge, they call it?
The lodge.
But that's gone now, isn't it?
No, it's still there. You mean beside the Grange?
No, the other side of the mountain. You know where the big MT hangar is?
MT, and you're
Yeah.
talking about what I'm calling the riding school.
Yeah, I think so. There's the cricket pitch, and then just beyond that, there's a great big building.
Yeah, well, that was a riding school.
Yeah, but that's now the MT hangar. And then at the other end of that, the far in end of that, there used to be a building.
Yes, they put a
Wooden building, the lodge or lodge. Isn't it?
No, they put a, whatever do they call it? Something Berry. Albury House or something like that. It was put up for an officer.
Hmm.
They
I
built
didn't know
up.
that.
Didn't Dixie Deans live in there?
Oh, I don't know. I couldn't tell you, but it was built for one of the officers at the camp,
Yeah.
and then they pulled it down. Decided it was difficult to get across the road there or something. I don't know.
There's no real access to it, so it's
No.
they've gone round behind the riding school bit there.
So this dump was, these ditches were,
They used them as dumps. People who had an old bucket or a saucepan or something, they say, well, what we'll do this. We'll go for a walk. We'll go up, we'll have a walk up around the trenches. And that's what they used to do. Throw it in there.
so if we went up there now and dug, we'd find,
Oh, you'd find a lot of rubbish up there, I bet you would. And people with tins, there weren't so nearly so many tins, of course, as there are today. There was very little food in tins in those days. But anybody that had something, put it in the bag. When we go for a walk, we'll get rid of it. I know, I saw my aunt next door going out one day with a watering can. I said, where are you going? What are you going to water? Going to go for a walk up to the trenches. No, that's where he was going. I suppose the watering can was full of holes. Yeah. Well, yes, they had to get rid of it. They buried it, or else piled it in a heap at the end of their allotment. You often saw rubbish at the end of an allotment, see? Or at the end of a garden, even. There was no. I don't know when they started collecting rubbish. Not so long after the First World War.
When you got into the teaching down here, did you just do sort of general teaching, or did you have a specific?
No, just general. General. Everything.
Because who was on the teacher staff besides you down there?
Miss Berry was in the infants. That was Arthur Whitmarsh's aunt. And Mr. Lutt was the headmaster. He lived by the side of the chapel. Mayhews live there now, don't they?
Is that their name? I don't know. What?
Next door to the chapel.
Yeah.
That's where he lived. And I had the 7-year-olds. That's right. And then various other people came in, part-timers, teaching. And listen, love it. He was almost an alcoholic. He used to come to school stinking of whiskey. And finally they got rid of him. But
Was he the one that used to go in the Legion at dinner time? Did he used to go?
there was no Legion, was there? Was there a
I
Legion?
thought there was somebody who used to go in the
I
Legion.
don't think there was a Legion.
Yeah.
I think he used to go. I don't know. I can't remember. I didn't take that much interest in pubs, I'm afraid.
No.
So I don't know. At any rate, finally the school managers decided that they'd better get rid of him, and for a time we had part-time teachers and so on. And then came the influx of children from everywhere they seemed to come. They put up with old new houses where the new buildings are after the war, see. The houses that were built up Charleston Close, and a whole row of houses were built just before the First World War, supposed to house married couples. But during the war, they were filled with Women's Army Auxiliary Corps they were, weren't they, in the First World War. They were filled with those. Well, after the war finished, in came married couple again, married quarters again. And the children all flocked down to Netherhaven School. Oh dear, you never saw anything like it. Of course, it was an old-fashioned place with old-fashioned little dual desks. And there were three, where a little seat was meant for two, there were three pushed in. And then there were these long desks that were supposed to hold four. There were 4 inkwells. You know, it was an old-fashioned 4 inkwells that's supposed to hold 4 children. Had to hold 6. Push up. And then, of course, they'd squabble about who used inkwell. You never did. And we kept getting inspectors and saying, well, something has to be done. And the Air Force decided that they would have a school of their own for their children, because they were complaints from the county council, you see. And so they built what is now the Catholic Church over Charleston. That was supposed to be a school for the children from the Air Force. Well, I don't know what happened there. I just don't know what happened, who couldn't agree or what. But it never got used as a school. Next thing we heard, I had a little girl in my class, I took her address. I said, where are you? Where are you living then? Well, she said, it's not really supposed to be a house. It was supposed to be a school. And their family had been put in this school, because they were crowded out up there at that time. So it was only the one row of houses there was. They've built a lot more since. And it never was used as a school. And the next thing we heard was that the school was going to be enlarged, which happened. It was almost doubled in size, you see, in 1926. And then they started messing about with changing the children. It was to be for older children only then, and the young ones had to go to Fillerton or Filding.
It's funny you say that, because the Catholic Church on maps is down as the school.
Yes.
You know, it's annotated on the map.
That's what it was built to be.
Who did they start from? Unless the county were prepared to run another school in the village.
No, I think it was going to be run by the War Defence people. I don't know. I wouldn't know the ins and outs of that. And I was young at the time, and I wasn't bothered over much. You know, you don't. Your interests are different. I wasn't very.
Did you enjoy your teaching then?
Oh yes, not at first. No, at first discipline is difficult. I mean, when you're young, the children don't take such a lot of notice of you. You know what I mean? But as you get older, it comes easier. They just take it for granted that they do as you tell them, sort of thing.
I'm not so sure they do anymore.
No, not
There
now.
was a spell when they did it. It's
No.
changed again now, isn't it?
No, once I got older, I never found any difficulty. They seemed quite happy to obey rules. I used to say to them, well, I can't do as I like. I've got to do so and so and so. So I'm sure I don't see why you should be able to do as you like. I said to them, well, it's true. I mean, they look upon adults as able to do just what they like, don't they? But I used to explain to them, I said, well, there's all sorts of rules and laws and goodness knows what that grown-up people have got to obey. They look so straight about it. I said, well, compared with that, there's very few little rules that you've got to keep. It is, too.
About caning, was that carried out?
Yes, not a lot, though. Only in extreme cases. But headmaster used to do it. Somebody been doing something really bad. But not a lot. It was quite a happy place, really. It must have been because some of the old pupils that I meet, they want to talk about school as it used to be. It isn't like that now, is it? They don't do this sort of thing.
Did you ever have school trips at all?
School
Trips?
trips?
Go anywhere?
No.
It was very much the basic education, was it?
Yes, it seems to be today.
School picnics?
No.
Sports?
The only time we go to sports, we had the sports, the area sports, and county sports. We took part in those.
Empire Day, I suppose, was that?
No, I didn't do Empire Day. Didn't keep Empire Day. For a time, we kept Remembrance Day and walked down to the memorial and had the 2 minutes silence, but that lapsed. Everything seems to go, doesn't it? They get fresh ideas, fresh values. I don't know. I don't know that those school trips are so valuable, you know.
No, I just wondered if you ever
The children enjoy them, of course,
Oh, yeah.
but they don't learn a lot from them.
But the ones I ever went on, you went away to whatever, like an agricultural college or whatever, you had to write up on it when you got back, so you had to sort of try and assimilate a bit.
Had to pay attention, yes, yes, that's different. But I know when Mr. Pink took over, he used to talk to them. He annoyed me because he took all our scripture lessons practically. We had a scripture syllabus to keep to. But they all assembled together for morning prayers, you see, here morning prayer. And then, instead of sending them back to the classrooms for their scripture lesson, he would keep them there and talk about his days in the RAF and what he did and all crumbs. And then sometimes he would have a picture show, like you've got still.
Oh yeah,
Slides.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of slides of the Bible. Well, they were quite good slides showing the Bible. But he just showed them without telling he just rushed through them, showing the slides, and not saying much about them. This is so and so, and that's it. And when we got back to the classroom, I say to the children, well, what do you remember about what you've seen? They look at me so straight. And I said, come on, tell me, what have you seen? And you know, they hardly knew anything that they'd seen. It was sheer waste of time. Some of the brighter ones would remember seeing a picture of Joseph in the pit, or something fairly outstanding. But it was sheer waste of time to me. And Miss Masham, the other teacher that was there, my age, she used to say, yes, sheer waste of time. He goes on and on about things, and the children weren't particularly interested. No. We didn't get on with Mr. Pink very well at all. I don't know what you think of him.
Well, I've never ever come across him teaching, I should say.
Oh, no. He had some good ideas, yes, and he worked, but I don't know. It's difficult to explain the difference in his attitude and ours. No, I don't know.
That's when the school trip started, I suppose.
Yes, he started school trips, yes. He certainly did. I remember the first one. I told you, didn't I? I got into trouble for helping a young girl to pay for a trip. Oh dear, no, I'm not likely to forget that. That's can I offer you a cup of tea or something, you folks? Would you like a cup of tea?
Unless you'd like one. What time is it?
4:45 nearly. Well, 20 to 4.
Yes, I would like that.
Yeah, we should know the school trips.
Is it?
It's all pretty exciting.
Get along with us. Chocolates.
Yes, it's very interesting. Did I tell you I had a letter from Marion the other day, and she said, would we like her to put a bit of the family history together for the history group? So I'll write back and say, yes, please.
Yes, well, because her history is much the same as mine.
Yeah.
Family history, so
That'd be interesting.
she belongs to the same branch of the family.
To have the bit about another Avon Fair.
Yeah. Another Avon Fair, come on.
Was this Ruddles Field?
Ah, no, this isn't. At Salisbury Fair, I wasn't going to talk about that. At Salisbury Fair time, all the things came along the main road.
What, the roundabouts?
The roundabouts, and they had animals, and also, well, like a circus, to go to the fair. And it used to take all day.
Oh.
And they had engines, traction engines, to pull it was before the days of lorries and that sort of thing. They had traction engines to pull all the heavy roundabouts and things. Well, when they got to the bottom of White Sheet Hill, they had to do a little bit of manoeuvring. One engine would go to the top of the hill, and they would put hawsers to the rope things, so that one was pushing and the other was pulling up White Sheet Hill, all this heavy stuff. And oh dear, all the people in the village used to come down to the main road to watch, because they get stuck there, say, at the bottom of the hill and all up by the dog and gun. And you could very often, that's a circus I expect that Marion's grandmother can remember. You'd hear lions and tigers roaring inside. You wouldn't see them, they'd be inside vans, but you could hear them.
Very exciting. To a child.
Yes. And as I say, it all went along the main road, and it took all day. The Sunday before Salisbury Fair, Nether End Fair, they'd say, we all got in and watched the fair things go by. And some of them, they weren't packed away. You could see the roundabouts and the swinging boats just packed on top of trucks, and I say, drawn by engines.
And I suppose some cart horses.
not many carts. They were nearly all engine-driven things. I suppose the same engines that drove the roundabouts.
Yeah, you get electricity from it for the lights and everything, I suppose.
Yeah.
What they used to have in Ruddles Field at all, you know, the
Oh,
white
yes.
sheet.
Turned out to make club, yeah. Top Hat Club, yes. That was good. That was a real day's outing at one time.
Was it?
Yes.
And what did they actually have there, entertainments-wise?
Well, it used to start off. It was a whole day. All the people had holiday. The farm workers. The farm workers mostly belonged to the Top Hat Club, you see. So they had to have holiday because they were fined if they didn't come to this meeting. They had a dinner. Well, the buildings pulled down there where they used to have the dinner at the Dog and Gun. But they didn't get up to the field until about between 3 and 4 in the afternoon. Right from 10 o'clock in the morning, or 8 o'clock in the morning, they were parading to various places all around the village. We went to church, went to church about 11, and then back they came, and dinner at the Dog and Gun. Everybody was supposed to go there, and if they didn't, I think they were fined £0.50, which was quite a lot in those days. I know my father was bandmaster then, a Falding band, and he used to bring the band. The band was there as well, you see, leading all these people. And he used to bring them over to our garden. They had a barrel of beer, not a very big one, a little barrel of beer. Put on an old chair without back. I can see it now. And we had a kind of arbour in the garden. Not a rose arbour or anything like that. It was just certain climbing plants that got over. Privet, some kind of climbing privet, I think it was, that made this arbour. And he always went in the name of the arbour. And they sat around there on boxes and on chairs and all sorts. They were there they left the men that belonged to the club over having their finishing their dinner, I suppose, and drinking and so on, and they were having their drinks all in our garden, because I went up there one day, and Mum says, no business going up there. And I was on charge. She said, the men are having a nice quiet time up there. I thought, well, they weren't, you know. They were drinking. They were having a rest, she said, and a nice quiet.
So it was a weekday event rather than a weekend, was it?
It was a weekday event. It wasn't till after the war that it became a sort of weekend event. It always came on the 29th of May. No matter what day of the week it was. But, of course, that got changed. See, it was the event of the year, really. There was one of the men belonging to the club used to sit at the gate and take money for entrance to the field. But Jennings were the people from Devizes who brought their roundabouts and swivel boats and so forth. But the band played in the evening. They used to cut a piece of grass, quite a big piece of grass, for dancing. And they would put stools all around it for the band to sit on. And young people could dance in a bit if they wanted to. They did too. It was a bit tough going on grass, but they did it. They enjoyed themselves, and people had a good time, really. And there was another fete we called the Forester's Fete. It was held over in the field where Wayne's Way is now. And the entrance to that field was where the entrance now is to the back of that house by Coville's. It didn't belong to those houses at all at one time, that entrance, you see.
That went up the back of our side of our garden.
Well, that's
Yeah.
like it goes now.
That went into the meadow, straight into the field. That was the entrance. That was the proper entrance to the field.
what was it called? The fair?
The Forester's Fete.
Forester's
That was based at the Fox and Hounds. The people who belonged to that Fox and Hounds, I could see them there. They had a great big banner, 2 sticks, one each side, a huge great thing across. Foresters, I can't remember all that was on it. It was a picture of some kind. The Foresters, they were. It was one of these sick clubs again, I suppose, where they paid in and had money.
Wonder what time of year that was.
Pardon?
Wonder what time of year that was.
Oh, that was in September. Beginning of September. It was just before school opened. Just before the summer holiday finished. I always remember that.
It's funny, they seem to like their clubs and groups.
Yeah.
Don't they?
We were a necessary part, weren't they?
Yeah.
Always paying for doctors and
Yes, we took it as a matter of fact. I never thought that the Top Hat Club was peculiar until I was in the 6th form at Bishop School, and we were chatting. It was wartime, you see, and we were left to do quite a lot of private study, where you can guess that a lot of private study didn't get done. A lot of chatting went on. And Whitsun came at the end of May, and we were talking about the holiday, the Whitsun holiday that we were going to have. And I happened to say, oh good, I shall be home for a Top Hat Club. And the other people said, Top Hat Club? Whatever's that? And that was the first idea I found that there was anything peculiar about it. And I started saying, cool, they must be dafters. They were saying, they are the good children, because none of them came from Menlo, they were from Salisbury or district round. What do you do? What for? And I couldn't answer half the questions they were asking me. As I say, it wasn't until then that I hadn't just taken it for granted that it was something that any village would have.
It wasn't just peculiar to this village.
It was just peculiar to this village. Nobody else had any idea about it. Thought it was.
Any idea where it came from? Or?
Whose idea it was, I had no idea. But the top hats had red, white and blue ribbon around them. It was
Somebody had a photograph, didn't they,
Yes.
of one of the later ones?
Yeah, sort of a patriotic affair, I should think it was. Red, white and blue. Red, white and blue sashes. A cross. Yes. They thought themselves smart. I don't know whose idea it was, goodness me, you know.
Because you did that article on it, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I remembered it very well. But to the older people of the village, even when I was a child, it was marvellous. It was something to be remembered. A special day. Yes. But it's all altered now. Completely altered, hasn't it?
There's not much actually going on in the village now, is there, of anything like church fete?
Did they have a church fete in those days?
They used to have what they called Hospital Sunday every year, and the open air service. I've known it in the field where Wayne's Way is. We had it there, and then when they started building in Wayne's Way, they had it where the tennis courts are, in front of the nets. But the last hospital fete I remember has to be about the mid-20s. They died out, I don't know why. People lost interest in church, it seems to me. Because they had a band. The band went, that was the trouble. When the band disintegrated, it made a lot of difference. Do you see that Arthur Whitmarsh is trying to get a band together? It makes a lot of difference, you know, to a village. If there's a band there, it attracts people, you see, particularly the youngsters, children and the young people. They'll go somewhere where there's a band, and that's what happened to a hospital Sunday. See? They paraded down through the village with collecting boxes, and then they had the service. That's what they used to do.
Nice to revive the Top Hat Club.
Yeah, I don't know whether. Yeah, I cannot feel that if the Top Hat Club was revived, it would be almost a source of ridicule for a lot of people.
Yes.
There would be a lot of people there just looking and laughing at people involved.
Yes, I think so
You know what I
too.
mean? Everybody
Judging by the reaction of my classmates who were 15, 16 years old, they thought it was funny and ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine some of the comments that would come.
Yeah. I don't think it would be a good idea. You cannot bring back the past. Not really.
Some things can be revived, but I'm not so sure that that's one of them.
No, I don't think so, because it's lost its use. You see, the whole idea was a money raising thing.
Yeah.
To help people who were sick. Well, now there's Social Security, and that's completely out of date, isn't it?
There are lots of things that can still do with revenue being raised, not necessarily anything specifically local. There are all sorts of charities, aren't there?
Yes.
And organisations that would always take money. I mean, well, just within the village, I mean, there's the play group. We've got no fundraising capability, really. I'm not sure there must be other groups going.
Yes, oh yes.
So, you know, there are always things that if money was raised, it could be given, even if you just gave it to the school or to the church roof or whatever. You know, there's always something.
Well, I don't think school needs it compared with it's a palace compared to what it was when I was teaching in it.
Oh, yeah. But, you know, as cuts get imposed sort of each year, it gets worse. You know, the sort of the capitation allowance isn't that good these days, I don't think, compared to what it was. Mind you, I suppose you can blow half of it buying a computer, can't you? So,
So you half the class are interested in computers.
see, this computer thing, you know, several people say, well, you must get a computer. And I said, well, you know, I don't want to prejudice my own kids' future by saying, we've got a computer. I said, what do you do with it when you get it? You know, what is it? What's it for? And it seems it's a glorified game.
Yeah, well, it seems to me that it saves people from using their brains.
Yeah.
I go into a shop now, and somebody has to write it down, and I say, it's so-and-so, what I bought, it's so-and-so. The paper shop's one of them. I said, that's so-and-so, I've got the money for you. No, they got to write it down.
Well, yeah, I think the girls have got to double check just to make sure they don't make a mistake.
Yeah, well, I don't know, but they can't seem to do mental arithmetic.
But there are other shops you go in with a thorough pickup of thing and tap out, you know, on his calculator.
Yeah.
And whatever figure it comes up with, it's great if you don't think about it. If you say 2 times 2, if you don't think about it and it comes up with 12, you just sort of 12, yeah, that's 12, you know.
Yeah.
Because you don't think about it. I know 2 times 2 is a bit obvious.
Yes, I know.
But when you're talking of sort of a few items at odd prices and a few more other odd prices, well, like say the girls on the tills in Tesco's, they're bumming your things through and tapping all the numbers in. They're not really sort of keeping a running total. And if they say it's £25 or £35 or £15, you just accept that as right, don't you? And I think this is the danger with the calculators, because when it comes to examinations these days, the kids are allowed to use calculators in exams. And so there's a great chance, you know, if your batteries are getting a bit low and it's starting to sort of go on the blink a bit, and you don't realise it, you know, you sort of, instead of doing the old long division or whatever in your head, you tap a few figures out and carry on writing, and of course once you've made one mistake in a long sum, it's gone, isn't
it? It goes on and on.
But of course with examinations they always say the answer's not that important, it's how you do it. But really,
wow,
it's getting the right answers that is the achievement, isn't it?
Of course it is.
But in life, I mean, if you do everything correctly and get it wrong in the end, that's a lot worse than doing everything wrong and coming out the
right answer. I should think it was too.
But as far as exams go, they don't sort of put a lot of store on your actual answer. It's how you get there and the workings you use to arrive at it.
That seems clear to me.
Well, that's what
I don't know.
Maths,
I'm glad I'm not teaching there. It all seems topsy-turvy to me.
Well, yeah. But, you know, with this computers thing, as I say, nobody can do, you know, whether the people involved think I'm getting at them, I don't know. But all I'm saying is, you know, what is the big advantage of it? You know,
I can't see.
Buying your kiddie a computer for a couple £100 or whatever, you know, how are you benefiting them apart from giving them a pleasant toy to play with on the TV screen? You know, that there's.
Just got a child in his class that had a computer for Christmas and a mini motorbike for Christmas. It was 2 things. Just think what that cost.
Well, you know, I mean, computer you're talking about, you get them for £200, depending on what you buy or more.
I think the motorbike was about 250. It's not scandalous.
Well, I don't know. It seems to me it saves people using their brains.
Money we spent £80 for a horse. Bought her an organ and keyboard. She seems quite keen on music, so I said to her, let's go.
Well, it's a good job you've got the money to spend on it.
Yeah, but you know, I thought there it's a musical instrument. You know that she might eventually benefit from it. I mean, it's a thing really no bigger than the tray, a little bit longer and a lot less wide, you know. And it'll run on batteries as well. So I thought, you know, instead of the pair of them fighting in the back of the car when we go anywhere, you sit down and play that.
Well, that's more useful.
Yeah, rather than just something electronic where you're pressing a few buttons, you know, at least there she's learning a bit of music.
But these computers are very complicated, aren't they? Mrs. Hopkins' granddaughter had one next door. I couldn't make head or tail of it.
Well, I think it's like anything else that once you know how to work it, you know, it's probably not as complicated as it looks. I mean, I don't understand computers at all. And, you know, they have them set up in shops so that you can have a fiddle and I've got what to press on it to do it. But I mean, if somebody just showed you or if you read the book, you know, you'd be on your way then. But it's just knowing the mechanics of the thing.
I'm too old to try anything like that.
Yeah, because
I did. She had a game set up. Have you tried it? I forget what it's called, but anyhow, if you press it to the right thing, there's buildings, and the bomb falls on that. There's an airplane going across. Supposed to be dropping bombs on the buildings. If you press the button at the right time, the bomb drops on the building. If you are too late or too early, it doesn't. And then the thing gets lower and lower, and finally it crashes into a building. That's the finish. And her granddaughter, Sopkin's granddaughter, she could get right out so that every building was level. See, without coming to the end. I couldn't get halfway. You've got to press it just at the right moment.
This is your sort of practice, isn't it?
What is the...
I can see it teaches you a coordination.
Whatever is the call. And then there was another one.